It's kind of interesting listening to South Carolina head coach Shane Beamer talk about the Gamecock situation with the Dogs. By the way, this shirt you can pick this up at Red Zone in Athens. Here's a look at where they are. It's on Clayton Street. Nonetheless, here's Shane talking about the Georgia game on Tuesday. I was listening to it, and he said this specific thing, which was kind of interesting. He said. I don't want to hear one person talking about anybody can beat anybody on Saturday. Don't want to hear one person talking about shocking the world. Don't want to hear one person talking about we just got to be better than them on Saturday. We don't have to be better than them all 12 weeks, I think is what he was trying to say. And then as soon as I walk out of a staff meeting, I got a text message on my phone from family members essentially telling me the same thing. Well, listen, Shane, you're not better than Georgia. So you do need to be better than them at that particular moment, or you're going to be 1-2. And as gracious as the South Carolina fan base typically is, they will turn on you. And this is a big game for them. It will be an indicator how the rest of your season will go. Uh, South Carolina's already 1-1 with two unimpressive performances. He also said this, and I think this is what he was trying to get to. He said, "Our guys have a lot of belief." And he repeats again. I told him I don't want to hear about shocking the world. There is great belief in our program. They believe. They have confidence. We have really good SEC football players. I don't have to convince them to believe. And I think that we're at the point with Shane's situation in Columbia where he's kind of at a tricky moment. And South Carolina, I've talked about this a lot this past week. South Carolina had a pretty good 2022, what were we, 2021. It wasn't bad. It really wasn't. Um, but they now have just not played well. And I think that that can't be ignored. I mean, it's an important part of your program to play well. No, it's not about belief, and it's not about this player or that player or whatever you want to call it. It's about going and executing. And if you don't do that, if you don't do what you need to do, the kids won't believe after a while. There won't be a reason for them to, because they'll question whether they've got the right stuff to make it happen. This Georgia game is not the greatest example of things. Georgia really should come in and kick South Carolina's teeth in, or their beaks. I don't know how that works. It should be a pretty decisive win for Georgia. If that's not the case, I will have questions about the Dogs, not about the Cocks. I mean this will not be about South Carolina. This will be about Georgia. Um, and I think that this game is completely about Georgia. We know it. We know what we need to know about South Carolina. They've got a ways to go still. Shane did a pretty good job in year one. Anybody that at South Carolina beats Florida, Auburn, they've had a good season. If you couple that with a win over North Carolina, all three in the same year, that's a good year for South Carolina. Now they're a little jumpy about Kentucky for some reason, but then their biggest challenge right now is competing every single day on the recruiting trail to get them up to the level where they can beat Georgia, where they can beat Kentucky, because they've not been doing that lately. And for all we're going to hear about 2019 and all this stuff, this is about Saturday. This is about where the programs are at right now. One thing, in addition, that Shane Beamer had to say was that he really wanted Williams-Brice completely crowded. He was talking about if you need to get up at 5 o'clock to start tailgating, whatever, but you need to be there ready to go. I'm not sure it will have the same effect as Georgia, Arkansas from a season ago at noon. We talk about that in DAWGSTRUCTION. Make sure you're picking up your copy today. If you want me to sign it, I'll be glad to do so, or personalize it for you or a friend or a child. Let me know. The link is down below. I'm happy to do that. Please tell me immediately after you order it that you want it personalized. That Arkansas game a year ago, there was a lot of stuff surrounding that game, if you recall. Georgia just knocked out Vanderbilt 62-0, and then game day came to town. There's Lee Corso picking the Dogs. They had to do it on the bridge at Sanford. Actually, they moved around a little bit, but they did it on the bridge at Sanford. They wound up at the bridge at Sanford, and it was a total. JT Daniels was going to be out that game. We didn't know that on Friday or Thursday. Here's Dan Jackson with a great punt block. You literally will not find that picture anywhere else. I know you won't, because that's the only camera angle that was being. I was the only person using that camera angle. But anyway, you know, for for South Carolina coming into this thing, this really is about sticking with Georgia as close as you can, making sure you don't get, landslided like you did last year in the second quarter. That's something that can happen with Georgia because it just never stops. Um, and I think it's great. So I've been to South Carolina, Georgia, uh, every year since '95, and I also went to the '93 game. And this is a passionate fan base. They love their chickens, but they're not good right now. They're just not. If they were good, they would have been more competitive with Arkansas. Arkansas got out 20-3. If they were good, they wouldn't be down in Georgia State in the third quarter. They wouldn't need two block punts to seal the victory against Georgia State. This is not a good South Carolina team right now. These are not the teams from Spurrier's time, frankly. And these are not the teams from that era of Mark Richt's time either. They are much more vicious and just sick on defense. So I think what I'm trying to say here, and I'm not doing a great job of it, is Shane Beamer's gotten to the point with his program where they have crossed a few rivers, they've jumped a few hoops, and they're getting towards where they want to go. But they've slid back slightly at the start of this season. And, this is going to kind of be the last permissible loss for South Carolina for a little bit of time. And, when you look at their schedule from here on out, they've got Charlotte next week, who they will kill, and then they'll kill South Carolina State. Those are your only gimme games. You've got this little thing with Kentucky. That's in October. They got to go up there and kick rocks with Kentucky. Um, Texas A&M suddenly wounded. That's a winnable game. They should beat Missouri. And they go to Nashville. They should win that game. And then they close with of traveling to the Gators, Tennessee at home, and Clemson. And after watching Clemson play the first weekend, I thought maybe they can maybe they can get beat by South Carolina this year. I'm not sure that's the case. I need to see a lot more from South Carolina, Spencer Rattler and company. Now, I'm old enough to remember plenty of the South Carolina Georgia games through the years. 2000, when Georgia went in there as a top 10 team. Quincy throws five interceptions. South Carolina wins that game with Charlie Strong's whacked out defensive structure. They really confused Georgia that day, even though the Dogs got out 7-0. 2002, having to save themselves. 2004, to some degree, having to save themselves, Georgia. Um, 2006, a shutout against South Carolina, having to save themselves as the number 2 team in the country. In 2008, the loss in 10, the blowout for South Carolina in 12, losing a game they had no business losing in 14. But ever since Kirby's been there, the games in Columbia have been pretty decisive towards Georgia. I mean, in 16, a 14-point win over South Carolina. South Carolina couldn't score. Georgia was not very good on offense either, but they weren't letting South Carolina score. That was a game that was stopped by a hurricane and played the next day. In 18, a matchup of top 25 teams, and Georgia just comes in and destroys South Carolina right off the bat. In 20, that game is probably the eeriest football game I've ever been to in my time covering football. South Carolina at night, Georgia the Saturday after Thanksgiving, the fog that descended on the game, Georgia running the ball at will on a South Carolina front that was not that great. Things don't seem to be tons better. I mean, there's just so many different ways that Georgia can win this game. I'm not super pumped up with their run yield right now, but if they wanted to, my suspicion is Georgia could run for probably a solid 160, 180 yards. They've been throwing quite well against everyone, 300 yards. I mean, once you get close to 500 yards, that's a lot of offensive production. So I think Shane is trying to get South Carolina going, knowing that a good performance, maybe not a win, but a good performance against the Dogs propels you to where you can be 4-1 going to Kentucky. Excuse me, 3-2 going to Kentucky, where that will be a critical stretch to try to get to a bowl game. This is a South Carolina team that definitely should, to me, get to a bowl game. I just don't think they can beat Georgia. That's what I think. Anyway, Shane Beamer trying to get the Cox fired up.